Captain Lyra Valen stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her hands steady on the controls. Her eyes, cold and unwavering, scanned the dark void of space, reflecting a galaxy brimming with unrest. Her gaze was sharp, the product of years spent navigating the chaos of galactic conflict. Every battle, every scar had been etched into her soul, a reminder of the price of peace. But beneath the hardened exterior there was a deeper pain, one she rarely acknowledged. The war had claimed her comrades, her allies, and a part of herself she could never reclaim. Her face, lined with the subtle marks of age and stress, betrayed nothing. She was the embodiment of duty, pragmatic, resolute, unshakable. In her uniform, the insignia of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition gleamed like a testament to humanity's strength. She had seen the rise of Earth from a fractured, war-torn world to one that could broker peace among the stars. Yet each victory felt hollow. What had humanity sacrificed to stand among the greatest civilizations in the galaxy? She had fought for peace, but peace had come at a price. And now, as she prepared for yet another diplomatic summit, the shadows of her past loomed large, a past full of death, betrayal, and the brutal reality of a universe that would never be kind. Still, she stood facing the unknown because she had no choice. The universe had not yet broken her spirit, and she would not allow it to. The galaxy was a cauldron of tension. Civilizations that had once shared the stars now vied for dominance. Old alliances were breaking, and new ones were born in the fires of conflict. The Xyrix Dominion, with their vast fleets and ruthless expansionist policies, had expanded into the Outer Rim, challenging the balance of power. The Tauran Confederacy had turned isolationist, preferring to hide behind their advanced defensive technologies. And the Thalaxians, a species of cold-blooded intellectuals, were playing the long game, manipulating factions like chess pieces on a board. Humanity, once nothing more than a footnote in the galactic archives, had grown into a formidable power under the banner of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition. Though young compared to the ancient species scattered across the galaxy, humanity's adaptability, innovation, and sheer will had earned them respect. But even respect was fleeting in the vast expanse of space, and humanity's rise was still seen by many as a challenge to the status quo. Lyra Valen's mission was to prevent the galaxy from descending into another war. The IPC had orchestrated a peace summit, bringing the major factions together on neutral ground. The summit was a fragile hope, one that could either pave the way for a new era or ignite a conflict that would tear the galaxy apart. And as the summit loomed, Lyra knew that the smallest spark could set the whole galaxy ablaze. The planet Euralis was a world of extremes. Towering mountains of ice and fire rose from the surface, casting long shadows across the sprawling metropolis of Vanguard City, home to the IPC's Central Command. But it was the station orbiting the gas giant Valinar that truly embodied the paradox of Euralis, a place of both peace and tension. The station, with its sleek metallic spires reaching into the void, was a symbol of humanity's technological prowess and diplomatic ambition. Yet in the silence of space, the station held its own mysteries, secrets older than the civilizations who now called the galaxy home. Beyond the station, Euralis's atmosphere shimmered with the uneasy stillness of a world on the edge. The peaceful trade hubs in orbit around the planet seemed secure, their bustling markets and diplomatic halls teeming with life. Yet just beyond their reach lay militarized zones, where fleets of ships lingered in waiting, and the uncharted regions beyond were whispered about with a mixture of awe and fear. Some said that deep within the stars, in places forgotten by all but time itself, there were remnants of ancient, long-dead species whose technologies could reshape the galaxy or destroy it. It was a place where alliances were forged and broken, where the future of the galaxy would be decided, and where the unknowns of the universe could come crashing into the fragile peace. The day of the summit was upon them. Lyra stood in the heart of Vanguard Station, gazing out through the reinforced glass at the swirling, chaotic storm of Valinar below. The peacekeepers had arrived. The diplomats were preparing their speeches, and the security measures were in place. There was no turning back now. Yet as Lyra prepared for her final briefing before the summit, The weight of responsibility seemed to grow heavier. There were those who believed that humanity's rise could be the key to lasting peace, and there were those who saw them as a threat to the delicate balance. The factions coming to Euralis were not friends, nor even allies. They were rivals, each one seeking something from the summit. Lyra's role was clear. Maintain the fragile peace, keep the talks on track, and prevent anything that could ignite the flames of war. But in the depths of her mind, a nagging voice asked, what if peace was not the answer? What if the galaxy needed something more, a force that could unite them or break them all? As she turned to face her officers and staff, Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, sharp signal from the outer reaches of the system. The message was brief, but chilling. Unknown vessel detected at the edge of the system. No identification. Let be. Summit could wait. The unknown had just arrived. Lyra's heart skipped a beat as she ordered the crew of the Vanguard into immediate action. The sensors were barely registering the anomaly. Whatever it was, it didn't fit the usual patterns of any known species. The usual protocols for first contact, establishing communications, scanning for hostile intent, were useless. There was nothing but a faint disruption in the space around them, an energy wave that made the station systems glitch sporadically. "Captain, we've got a problem," Commander Arrow said, his voice tense over the comm. "We're picking up strange energy readings. It's like they're hiding." Lyra frowned. "Define hiding." "The ship, whatever it is, doesn't show up on the scanners unless we're directly aligned with it. It's like it's bending light around itself." Lyra's eyes narrowed. Bending light? That was no ordinary ship, and certainly not an alien race she recognized. Suddenly, the station's alarms blared, and a strange, shadowy figure appeared on the viewing screens. A fleeting image, almost spectral. It pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly energy. "Captain," said Rena, her voice trembling, This isn't like anything we've encountered before. I'm not sure it's even a ship. It's as if the very essence of it is shifting. It's alien." "Contact the fleet, get them to engage," Lyra ordered, her voice steady, masking the unease that churned in her stomach. Something had entered the galaxy's borders, and it was unlike anything they had ever seen. Humanity was about to face an unexpected enemy, one that defied all known logic and technology. The galaxy's most feared species had just arrived, and they were human. Lyra's mind raced as the truth slowly unfolded before her. The mysterious entities, the shadows, that had slipped through their sensors and disrupted their communications were not aliens. They were humans, but not in any form she recognized. As her team scoured the available data, the truth hit like a tidal wave. These beings, these obsidian kin, were descendants of Earth's first failed colonization attempts, humanity's forgotten children, exiled to the farthest reaches of space centuries ago. While the rest of humanity had expanded, fought wars, and built an empire, this lost branch had evolved in isolation, untouched by the galaxy's constant turbulence. Their abilities defied logic, invisibility, energy manipulation. They could bend light, shape matter, and slip between dimensions like shadows. Their very presence felt unnatural, as though the laws of the universe bent around them. They were nearly indestructible, beings who had adapted to survive in a hostile, unforgiving environment where no other species could thrive. Lyra felt a deep sense of shock and confusion. She had been trained to deal with the complexities of alien life, but this was something else. These beings, these humans, had transcended what she thought was possible for her species. And yet, the question gnawed at her. How could they be human? They were so alien, so other, that she could hardly reconcile them with the people she had sworn to protect. The revelation shattered her understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. She had always believed that humans were defined by their ability to adapt, to innovate. But these humans, the obsidian kin, had taken adaptation to an unimaginable extreme. The obsidian kin, as they called themselves, revealed their existence with chilling finality. They were not just survivors, they were a powerful race, far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. For centuries, they had remained in the distant, unknown corners of the galaxy, isolated from the rest of humanity, and untouched by the galactic wars that had shaped the future. Now they were emerging from the shadows, their presence a direct challenge to the fragile peace the IPC had fought so hard to establish. The sudden appearance of these beings was like a storm, breaking over the horizon, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Their powers, their overwhelming strength, were beyond anything humanity had faced before. They could manipulate energy, move undetected through space, and reshape the very fabric of reality. The technological advances they possessed were enough to crush entire fleets without breaking a sweat. But it wasn't just their power that made them dangerous. It was their ideology. The Obsidian Kin believed that humanity's true destiny was to dominate the galaxy. They saw the galaxy's existing powers, alien species, coalitions, and empires, as weak, flawed, and ultimately destined to fall. The only way for humanity to secure its future was through absolute domination, peace, compromise, diplomacy. These were concepts they rejected, seeing them as signs of weakness. As Lyra stood before her team, the weight of their words sank in. The Obsidian Kin were not a race of diplomats. They were a race of conquerors. Their sudden arrival on the galactic stage could send shockwaves through the Peace Summit, potentially plunging the entire galaxy into war. Lyra's heart pounded as the implications of the Obsidian Kin's emergence became clearer. The Peace Summit, the very event she had worked tirelessly to organize, was now teetering on the edge of disaster. The stakes had never been higher. The delicate balance of power in the galaxy, a balance that had taken decades to establish, was on the verge of collapse. If the Obsidian Kin chose to act, if they decided to escalate this conflict, the peace process would be shattered in an instant. They would not simply seek to negotiate, they would demand submission. And if the galaxy's powers refused, the consequences would be catastrophic. But Lyra's duty was clear. She had to keep the peace. She had to find a way to prevent this confrontation from spiraling into full-scale war. Yet, as the days ticked, down toward the summit, her mind kept returning to the question that haunted her. Could peace even be possible with the Obsidian Kin? Their ideology, their unyielding belief in domination, made negotiation seem impossible. And still, as the summit approached, there was no easy answer. The Obsidian Kin would not be swayed by diplomacy alone. Their presence was a reminder that humanity's place in the galaxy was fragile, and the peace that had been achieved might not survive their challenge. Lyra was caught in a race against time, a race to preserve a fragile peace while confronting an unstoppable force. Lyra met with the Obsidian Kin delegation in the cold, sterile chambers of the peace station. The room was designed to be neutral, a place where discussions could be had without the heat of passion clouding judgment. But there was nothing neutral about this conversation. The leader of the Obsidian Kin, Arxol, stood tall and composed, his eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural light. He regarded Lyra with a mixture of disdain and curiosity, as if she were an insect beneath his notice. To him, she represented the old, failed humanity, the humanity that had fragmented, weak and indecisive, allowing the galaxy to remain in chaos. "We do not seek peace," Arxol declared, his voice cold and commanding. "We seek control. Humanity's true strength lies in its ability to rule, to dominate. Your pacifistic ideals will not save you. They will destroy you. Peace is the lie that has kept you weak." Lyra's jaw tightened. She had heard rhetoric like this before, but it never failed to shock her. The idea that peace was a weakness, that their entire galaxy was built on the fragile illusion of cooperation, was deeply unsettling. Yet, despite her rising anger, she knew that she had to remain calm, diplomatic. "You misunderstand," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "Peace isn't about weakness. It's about survival. The galaxy's strength lies in its diversity, in its ability to come together, despite our differences." Arxal's expression hardened. Survival through subjugation, through power. You do not understand the true nature of humanity's destiny. Only those strong enough to lead deserve to rule. It was clear now. The Obsidian kin saw humanity's future not as one of cooperation, but one of conquest. Their vision for humanity was one where might made right, where those who had the strength to rule would shape the galaxy in their image. The cultural clash was profound, and as Lyra listened, she realized just how deeply entrenched the Obsidian kin's beliefs were. Their vision for the galaxy was incompatible with the IPC's ideals of peace. It was only a matter of time before the two forces collided. The negotiations had failed. The ideological divide was too vast, the gulf between peace and domination, too wide to bridge. Tensions exploded when a rogue faction within the Obsidian kin, led by a dissident warlord, attempted to assassinate Lyra during a diplomatic meeting. The room descended into chaos as weapons were drawn, and the true nature of the Obsidian kin's intentions became clear. The Obsidian kin, though vast in number, did not rely solely on their physical might. Their powers were terrifying. They could move through walls, appear without warning, and manipulate the very fabric of the environment around them. Energy blasts crackled through the air, and Lyra's crew scrambled to defend themselves, outclassed and outmatched by the sheer scale of the threat. But Lyra would not be defeated. She ordered the Vanguard's fleet into position, rallying her forces for a battle that had been forced upon them. As the first exchange of fire broke out, Lyra realized that this was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for humanity's future. The Obsidian kin were not just powerful, they were terrifyingly efficient. Their speed, their mastery of energy, made them nearly unstoppable. Yet, even in the face of this overwhelming force, Lyra's resolve did not waver. She would not let humanity's destiny be decided by those who saw peace as weakness. The battle raged on, setting the stage for a conflict that would shape the galaxy for generations to come. Lyra sat in the dimly lit war room aboard the Vanguard, scanning through the intelligence reports and historical data. The Obsidian kin's sudden emergence had not just shaken the galaxy, it had brought to the surface the very idea of what humanity could become. What was once a fragile, scattered species had now evolved into something utterly different. A race of conquerors. As Lyra pored over the documents, the cold, harsh truth began to crystallize. The Obsidian kin saw themselves as the next step in human evolution, an inevitable progression toward supremacy. For centuries, they had lived in isolation, evolving in a way that had made them nearly indestructible. They had mastered energy, manipulation, bending light and matter to their will, rendering conventional weapons useless against them. But it wasn't just their powers that made them formidable, it was their belief in their destiny. The Obsidian kin held themselves as the pinnacle of human potential, viewing all other species, humanity included, as weak, unworthy of ruling the galaxy. They believed that only through dominance and control could humanity truly fulfill its purpose. Peace, compromise, and diplomacy were seen as signs of weakness, the fallacies of a fractured, failing species. The more Lyra read, the more the ideology of the Obsidian kin chilled her to the bone. They didn't see themselves as conquerors for the sake of power alone. They believed in their moral superiority. In their eyes, the galaxy was a battleground, and only the strong had the right to command the stars. Humanity, as they understood it, would either submit to their will or be crushed underfoot. The problem wasn't just their power, it was the belief system that underpinned their actions. The Obsidian kin were not just a threat to peace, they were a challenge to the very idea of humanity as a species of diversity, cooperation, and adaptability. If the galaxy was to survive, they had to be stopped. But Lyra didn't know how to confront an enemy that saw themselves as the true humans, an enemy that wasn't just after power, but after the future of the very species she had sworn to protect. The revelation that the Obsidian kin were descendants of Earth's first colonization attempts hit Lyra with the force of a cosmic truth she wasn't prepared to accept. The records were incomplete, fragmented, but the truth was there. These beings, These humans had once been part of humanity, cast aside when the early colonization efforts failed. The first mission to colonize distant stars hundreds of years ago had gone horribly wrong. The colony ship, named Genesis, was supposed to be the vanguard of humanity's expansion into the stars. But instead of thriving, the colony had been abandoned after communication with Earth was lost. The settlers were left to fend for themselves on a hostile planet far from home, cut off from the rest of humanity. Over the centuries, they had been forced to evolve, adapting to the harsh environment in ways unimaginable to their earthbound ancestors. They had become something alien, both physically and philosophically, shaped by survival in a universe that had no place for the weak. Their minds, once similar to humanity's, had adapted and evolved with technologies and abilities far beyond the understanding of their forebears. As Lyra delved deeper into the archives, the connection between the Obsidian kin and Earth became undeniable. The lost colony had been humanity's first attempt to reach out beyond the cradle of Earth, and the consequences of its failure were now coming home to roost. Lyra felt a deep, visceral shock. The Obsidian kin weren't just a threat because of their abilities. They were a reminder, a haunting reflection of humanity's dark past, of a failure that had been hidden for centuries. It raised the impossible question, what if these beings were humanity's true heirs? What if they had become the ultimate form of humanity, a species forged in the fires of survival? Lyra's faith in humanity was shaken, and with it the very foundation of her mission to protect peace. Lyra stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the swirling expanse of stars before her. The galaxy, vast and unpredictable, seemed more uncertain than ever before. Her mind was tangled in a moral dilemma that had no easy answers. The Obsidian kin were right about one thing: survival. Their philosophy, brutal as it was, made sense from a certain perspective. The galaxy was a hostile place, one where only the strongest could endure. For centuries, humanity had clawed its way to the top, and now, these forgotten humans were showing them what true strength looked like. They had survived where others would have perished, adapted in ways that made them nearly unstoppable. But was domination the only way to secure humanity's future? Lyra had always believed that humanity's true strength lay in cooperation, in the ability to unite different species and cultures for a greater purpose. Her belief in peace had guided her through countless diplomatic challenges, and it had forged the IPC into a force for stability in the galaxy. But the Obsidian kin weren't interested in peace. They were interested in control. In their eyes, peace was just a lie that kept the weak alive. As Lyra sat in the quiet of the bridge, a voice echoed in her mind. If humanity is destined to lead, can it afford to be weak? She had always believed that humanity's greatest strength was in its ability to adapt. But was that enough? Was it possible that the Obsidian kin's vision of a strong, unified humanity, even if it meant domination, was the only true path forward? Could she sacrifice her ideals of peace for the survival of a united human species? The thought made her sick, but it was a question she couldn't ignore. Her faith in diplomacy was being tested like never before. In her heart, Lyra knew that the only way forward might require something darker, something more like the Obsidian kin's philosophy. Yet even as she wrestled with the question, she felt the weight of a looming choice, and it would define the future of humanity. As the situation with the Obsidian kin intensified, the tension among Lyra's crew reached a boiling point. The divide between those who believed in diplomacy and those who advocated for military action had never been clearer. Dr. Rena Holt, the ship's lead scientist, was fascinated by the Obsidian kin. Her deep curiosity about their technology, biology, and the evolution of their race made her sympathetic to their cause. She saw the Obsidian kin not just as an enemy, but as a potential evolutionary path for humanity. Their technological advances, their ability to manipulate energy, and their superiority in every way could offer solutions to the galaxy's most pressing problems. Rena argued that humanity could learn from the Obsidian kin, and maybe even join them to achieve something greater. Lyra, don't you see? Rena's voice was soft but insistent. The obsidian kin are the next step. They're what humanity could be. The peace you're fighting for is just fragile. They have the strength to make the galaxy a better place. Lyra's gaze hardened as she listened. You think domination is the answer? She asked sharply. They don't want peace, Rena. They want power. They'll crush anyone who stands in their way. But Rena's eyes flashed with determination. Maybe humanity has to be crushed first. Maybe that's what we need to survive. Meanwhile, Commander Arrow, ever the pragmatist, had become increasingly aggressive in his approach. His military background had trained him to view the Obsidian Kin as a direct threat to the IPC, and he was growing impatient with the slow pace of diplomacy. The Vanguard's weapon systems were primed and Arrow was ready to fire. We can't afford to sit here and talk while they plot their next move. We need to take action now, Arrow argued, his voice cold with resolve. If we don't, the Obsidian Kin will wipe us out. We have no choice but to strike first. Lyra was caught between her crew's competing ideologies. Rena saw opportunity in the Obsidian Kin, while Arrow saw only an existential threat. With her crew divided, Lyra felt the weight of command more heavily than ever. The galaxy's future was uncertain, and so was her own. The tension between the IPC and the Obsidian Kin finally exploded into violence. A rogue faction within the Obsidian Kin, one that had grown disillusioned with Arxal's ideology of control, decided to make a deadly move. Their goal, to assassinate Lyra Valen. The attack came swiftly, catching everyone off guard. Lyra was alone in her quarters when the first blast struck the hull of the Vanguard. The lights flickered as the ship's defenses scrambled to react, but the Obsidian Kin's stealth technology was too advanced. Before Lyra could reach her weapon, a figure appeared in the shadows. It was an Obsidian Kin agent, cloaked in darkness, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. He raised a weapon, but before he could fire, Lyra's hand was already on her pistol. The shot rang out, but the Obsidian Kin's powers deflected the bullet like it was nothing. The battle that ensued was a blur. Lyra fought fiercely, but the Obsidian Kin's strength was overwhelming. It wasn't just physical. They controlled the energy around them, making every movement seem unnatural. But as the fight raged on, something strange happened. The assassin hesitated. For just a moment, Lyra saw a flicker of doubt in the agent's eyes. It was a brief hesitation, a moment of uncertainty that raised a question. Was this about more than just conquest? Was there something more personal at play? The hesitation was fleeting, but it was enough. Lyra struck, taking the assassin down before he could finish his task. The question lingered. What had driven the Obsidian Kin to this point? Was it just conquest, or something deeper, something more personal? Lyra didn't know, but one thing was certain. This war was far from over. Lyra stepped into the dimly lit chamber, the air thick with anticipation. Arxal, the leader of the Obsidian Kin, stood at the center, a towering figure cloaked in shadows that seemed to writhe and pulse around him. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, an unsettling mixture of arrogance and conviction. His presence alone was enough to command the room, and as he turned to face Lyra, the weight of the moment pressed down on her like a vice. "You finally arrived, Captain Lyra Valen." Arxal's voice rang out, smooth and unyielding. "I was beginning to think you would never see the truth, but now here you stand. Welcome to the future of humanity." Lyra's pulse quickened. "The future of humanity? You mean your version of it?" Arxal smiled, cold, calculating. Humanity was always meant to be more than this. The fabled Earth, the weak remnants of an old, fractured species. It was never meant to lead the galaxy. It was always meant to be us. The Obsidian Kin, the true heirs of Earth, have evolved beyond the limits that shackled your ancestors. He walked closer, the shadows seeming to bend around him. "We have risen from the ashes of Earth's failed colonies. While you squandered time with peace treaties and weak alliances, we have honed our strength, our will. Now we will reshape this galaxy in our image." Lyra's eyes narrowed. And you think this domination is the answer? Arxal's expression hardened. The answer is not peace. The answer is unity through strength. The galaxy belongs to those who can take it. And humanity, through us, will rule. He stepped closer, his gaze intense. Join us, Lyra. Lead humanity into a new era. Together we can forge an empire unlike anything the galaxy has ever known. We will end the cycle of weakness and pave the way for true power. We will lead. Lyra felt the weight of his words, the crushing pressure of the choice ahead. The temptation was undeniable. An alliance with these beings who were as powerful as they were certain of their superiority. But as she met his gaze, she knew she couldn't agree with his vision. His empire would be built on domination, not unity, and that was not the future she had fought for. Lyra stood at the precipice of a decision that would shape the galaxy's future. Arxal's offer was tempting, an alliance that would give humanity the strength to command the stars, to break free from the weaknesses that had plagued them for centuries. To become true rulers, as Arxal claimed, it would mean the end of the IPC, the end of diplomacy, and the rise of a new order, but the cost was too high. It would come at the expense of everything humanity had worked for, the ideals of peace, cooperation, and diversity that had been the foundation of the Intergalactic Peace Coalition. Lyra knew that the galaxy was not ready for the kind of tyranny Arxal envisioned. She could not align with a future that sought to crush others in the name of progress. "You're asking me to abandon everything I've believed in," Lyra said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. "You want me to betray humanity's future for your version of what it should be, but I won't do that. Not for the sake of domination." Arxal's eyes flared with anger. "You would destroy humanity's chance at true power for a fleeting dream of peace? You are weak, Lyra, and that weakness will be the death of you, and the death of your people." Lyra's fingers tightened around the hilt of her blade, her resolve hardening. She knew what she had to do. Peace might be difficult, it might be fragile, but it was humanity's only true hope. She could not allow the Obsidian kin to reshape the galaxy in their image. "I choose humanity's future," she said, her voice unwavering. "A future built on unity, not domination." The choice was made. There was no turning back. As Lyra prepared for the battle that would follow, her mind raced for a way to undermine the Obsidian kin's superiority without losing everything. Their technological prowess, their abilities to manipulate energy, and their mastery of stealth made them a nearly unstoppable force. But there was one thing they didn't account for: human ingenuity. Lyra quickly called upon Dr. Rena Holt, who had spent weeks studying the Obsidian kin's technology. "We need to exploit their one weakness," Lyra said, her eyes scanning the glowing schematics of their weaponry. Rena hesitated, then spoke with a mix of awe and fear. "Their energy fields. They're not invincible, they're vulnerable to a specific frequency, a signal that disrupts their energy manipulation." Lyra nodded. "Then that's our opening. We'll create a device that emits a frequency strong enough to destabilize their energy field. It won't be a permanent solution, but it'll give us the edge we need." As the team worked feverishly, Lyra coordinated the final stages of the plan. The IPC forces were preparing to engage the Obsidian kin in a desperate stand. It was a risky move, but it was the only one they had left. If they couldn't disable the Obsidian kin's power, the galaxy would be lost. The clock was ticking. As the vanguard sailed toward the confrontation, Lyra's thoughts turned to the Obsidian kin's philosophy: survival through strength. She had always believed that true strength came from the ability to adapt, to survive not by domination, but by embracing the complexity of the universe. This plan was humanity's answer to that philosophy. The galaxy could be ruled, not through fear, but through understanding. The battle raged in the void of space, the sky alive with explosions and flashing energy beams. The vanguard led the charge, the IPC forces behind it struggling to hold their ground against the overwhelming might of the Obsidian kin's fleets. Ships exploded in flashes of fire and debris as the two forces clashed, the future of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Lyra's heart raced as the vanguard came under fire. She had made her decision, and now it was time to fight for humanity's future. The frequency disruptor was ready, but they had to get close enough to the Obsidian Kin flagship to unleash its full power. Vanguard to all ships. Prepare to engage. Lyra's voice was steady, though every fiber of her being screamed with the urgency of the moment. She could hear the crackle of energy weapons on all sides, but she focused only on the mission ahead. She had to trust her crew. Then, the moment arrived. The disruptor was deployed, a pulse of energy that sent a shockwave rippling through the Obsidian Kin's defenses. Their shields flickered, their stealth abilities failed, and their fleets faltered for just a moment. Lyra seized the opportunity. Now, fire everything we have. The Vanguard unleashed its full might, blasting through the weakened defenses of the Obsidian Kin flagship. The flagship shuddered as explosions tore through its hull, the once indomitable force now on the brink of collapse. Lyra's heart pounded, but there was no time for victory. This was a battle for the soul of humanity. The fate of the galaxy hung by a thread, and Lyra fought with every ounce of strength she had. As the final explosions died down, Lyra stood on the deck of the Vanguard, watching the remnants of the Obsidian Kin's fleet drift into the void. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Obsidian Kin had been defeated, but not completely. Some factions had retreated, and some had surrendered. Others had joined the IPC, recognizing the value of unity over dominance. Lyra's mind was in turmoil. She had won, yes, but at what cost? The victory had been hard-earned, and the moral implications weighed heavily on her. Had they truly won? Or had they merely delayed a larger conflict that would rise again in the future? In the aftermath, Lyra spoke to her crew, those who had fought with her, those who had believed in the cause. "We've defeated the Obsidian Kin for now," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of the decision. "But the future is uncertain. This victory was hard-won, and we cannot lose sight of what we're fighting for. Unity, not domination." The galaxy had changed, but the question remained. Was peace truly possible? Or had humanity simply delayed the inevitable, forced to embrace a harsher future in order to survive? Lyra didn't have the answers, but as she looked out at the stars, she knew that humanity's future was still in their hands, and for now that was enough. The galaxy had come to a precarious halt. The war that had nearly torn it apart now seemed like a distant memory, but the scars of the conflict were still fresh. The Obsidian Kin had been dealt a blow, their dominance halted, but their presence could not be ignored. While some factions of the Obsidian Kin had decided to integrate into the Intergalactic Peace Coalition, IPC, and work toward a new, cooperative future, many others had retreated into the uncharted corners of the galaxy. They were not defeated, not truly. They were simply regrouping, biding their time for the right moment to strike again. Lyra stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, staring out at the swirling expanse of stars. The station was quieter now, its once bustling halls subdued, as peace, fragile and tentative, settled in. It was a hard-won peace, but one that had cost humanity dearly. The Obsidian Kin had been a threat, yes, but so had humanity's own darker impulses, their desire for dominance. And now, Lyra realized, those impulses were never truly gone. They were simply waiting for another opportunity to emerge. Her hands gripped the rail as she reflected on the cost of leadership. The peace she had fought for wasn't perfect, it wasn't even stable. It was a peace that depended on the cooperation of species that had never fully trusted each other, on the tenuous belief that diplomacy and unity could win out over division and power. It was a path forward, but not a clear one. Lyra had made her choices, but the burden of those decisions weighed on her every day. As she looked out at the stars, she knew that the road ahead would be filled with new challenges, challenges that would demand more than she had already given. The galaxy wasn't at peace, it was simply holding its breath. And the next conflict, the next trial, was already on the horizon. It would take every ounce of strength, every ounce of human resilience, to navigate the uncertain future that awaited them. The stillness of the observation deck gave Lyra time to reflect. Her mind wandered back to the days before the Obsidian Kin had appeared, when peace seemed possible, when the galaxy felt like a place of hope. Back then, she had believed in the, ideal of humanity. She had believed that through cooperation, humanity could become a force for good, for unity. Now, after everything that had happened, she wasn't so sure. The Obsidian Kin had forced her to confront the darker side of humanity, our side that thirsted for power, for domination. She had seen that potential firsthand, not just in them, but in her own people. She had been tempted, almost swayed by the idea of a united humanity ruling the galaxy, reshaping everything in their image. But she had resisted. She had chosen peace, at great personal cost. And yet now she questioned whether that choice had been the right one. Humanity was no longer the same as it had been before the rise of the Obsidian Kin. They had been pushed to the edge, forced to confront their deepest fears and desires. And in doing so, they had been forced to grow, to evolve in ways that no one had expected. But that growth had come with a price. The galaxy wasn't simply a place for survival now. It was a place where choices had to be made. And those choices, whether for good or ill, would define what humanity became. Lyra's gaze turned inward as she asked herself, was humanity's rise to dominance inevitable? Was it written into their very nature? Or could humanity, at long last, choose a different path? One that was defined by wisdom, understanding, and cooperation, not by power and dominance? She had to believe it could. But the choices she had made, the choices they all had made, would shape the future. Humanity's identity, its legacy, was still in the balance, and Lyra had no illusions about how fragile that balance was. The peace that had been brokered between the IPC and the Obsidian Kin was just the beginning. The galaxy, vast and untamed, held many secrets, secrets that had long been hidden from the rest of civilization. In the wake of the conflict, the IPC discovered something even more unsettling. Other human colonies, long lost, unknown, and scattered throughout the galaxy. Lyra stood at the control center, receiving reports from the fleet. A few of these colonies had already made contact, but many were still silent. They were out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered. What kind of humanity would they be? Would they be like the Obsidian Kin, hardened and brutal? Or would they, like the IPC, fight for peace and unity? The discovery of these colonies left Lyra with a feeling of uncertainty. Humanity's true place in the galaxy was still unknown. What path would they choose, domination or cooperation? The possibilities seemed endless, but so did the dangers. There would be no easy answers. The galaxy was filled with unknowns, and Lyra knew that the future would be shaped by both their victories and failures. As the ship sailed into the uncharted territories, Lyra could feel the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. The next chapter was unfolding before them, and she could only hope that humanity had learned the lessons of the past. The road ahead was unclear, but Lyra knew one thing for certain. Humanity's future would be written by those who dared to confront the unknown, and by those who chose how to survive in a galaxy full of infinite possibilities. Lyra sat in the command chair aboard the Vanguard, her hands resting lightly on the console as the ship cruised through the vast expanse of space. It had been months since the battle with the Obsidian Kin, and the galaxy was still reeling from the aftermath. Despite the fragile peace that had been brokered, Lyra knew that the calm would not last forever. There were always whispers, always rumors, floating through the galaxies like shadows in the dark. This time, the whispers spoke of something new, something human. A distant part of the galaxy, far from the IPC's reach, had begun to stir. The reports were sparse, but the message was clear. Another human faction, one that had remained hidden for centuries, had begun to make its presence known. They were not like the Obsidian Kin, nor like the IPC. The few messages intercepted hinted at an entirely different path, one of survival and reinvention. For Lyra, the mission was clear. She had seen the fragility of peace, the inherent dangers of domination, and now the galaxy was calling her once again. This new force, these unknown humans, held the potential for both hope and uncertainty. Lyra knew that humanity's greatest strength may not lie in military might, but in its capacity for reinvention, its ability to adapt, to evolve. She felt a surge of determination. If there was a chance to change the future, to forge a new legacy for humanity, this was it. As the Vanguard shifted into warp speed, Lyra's thoughts turned toward the future. The galaxy awaited her next move. The path forward would not be easy, but it was the only one worth walking. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, because the future of humanity was, once again, in her hands. The journey through the stars had only just begun, but the galaxy was already shifting beneath the weight of its own history. While the IPC and the Obsidian kin had reached a tenuous peace, the galaxy was far from stable. Factions across the stars had begun to question whether the Obsidian kin, with their harsh philosophy of dominance, truly represented the future of humanity, or if humanity itself could rise above its fractured past. The unknown human faction that Lyra was now chasing would play a pivotal role in this struggle. Would they choose the path of peace, of cooperation, or would they be another example of humanity's darker instincts, striving for dominance and control? The echoes of the Obsidian kin's ideology still lingered, infecting the thoughts of many, pushing the galaxy toward a new conflict that would shape everything in its wake. Lyra knew that the fight for humanity's future was not yet over. It was only just beginning. Whether this new faction would be an ally or an adversary remained uncertain. But one thing was clear. The galaxy stood on the brink of a new chapter, one that would determine if humanity would continue to rise above its past mistakes, or if it would repeat them, forging a future defined by war and division. As the Vanguard sped toward its new mission, Lyra felt the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on her. The stakes were higher than ever, and the path ahead was more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The struggle for humanity's place in the galaxy would continue, and this time, it would be a fight for the soul of humanity itself.